Right, on with us now is Chris Wallace, who I have watched on my TV for years and years and years. It's super cool to talk to you, Chris. He's currently the host of Fox News Sunday, which airs on Fox broadcasting stations all over the place. He's got a new book coming out June 9th called Countdown 1945. His dad was Mike Wallace from 60 Minutes. And so I want to get to the book in a second, Chris, and welcome to the show. But I got to ask, as a news guy who's been doing it at your level for as long as you have, are you watching the news basically every second now because of what's happening?
Well, let me say, first of all, I am really excited. I'm tickled to be talking with you. As you know, I'm sure you talk to a lot of people who are on book tours and have a book to promote, and I hope we'll do that in the course of this conversation. But right back at you. I've been listening to you for years. You kind of introduced me to country music, and so it's a real treat for me to get to talk to you. And in terms of answering your question, yeah, this is pretty extraordinary. First of all, I've been in the business literally half a century. I've been in news, first newspapers, then TV, for 50 years, and most things don't surprise me anymore. I'm fascinated by them, but I'm not shocked by them. And the pandemic absolutely is something I never expected in my lifetime. That was the 1917 Spanish flu. I was vaguely aware of that, and the idea that we're going through that now, and that I've got a mask here somewhere, and when I go out to a store, as I had to today, I have to put on a mask. I never imagined that in my life, and now, of course, the riots across the country. I can't say that's so unforeseen. I mean, we've grown up with that. I was around in 1968 after the assassination of Martin Luther King and saw cities rioting and burning across the country. But it never fails to shock you and distress you, because it's, to see America at war with itself is a bad thing.
As someone who has seen this happen a few times, and not just these instances specifically, but do you see history repeating itself? Again, not just in this instance, but as covering the news, do you see the same thing happening cyclically over and over again?
Well, yes and no. I mean, there's some things that, that's part of the excitement. Probably the wrong word to say, but, look, if you're a fireman, you like to go chase fires. If you're a newsman, you like to go chase stories. So it is part of the excitement when there's something new or unforeseen that happens. There are surprises. Donald Trump getting elected president, that certainly was a shock and a surprise. As I say, if the pandemic is history repeating itself, it took 100 years for it to repeat itself at this scale in our country. But police brutality, the murder of unarmed black people by white policemen, unfortunately, that does. I understand it's an exception, and whether it's 90 or 95 or 99% of the police, I think, do a great job, Bobby. But yes, this does happen, and when it happens, there's usually a reaction.
On with us now is Chris Wallace. He's got a book which I'm super excited about. It comes out June 9th. It's called 1945, and I was just reading some notes from the book because, Chris, I'll be honest with you, I don't have it. I would love to have it with a little note in it that said, "Bobby, you're my favorite ever."
I think you got a friend who's the author.
Okay, well, that's all I'm saying,
There you go. I can get you a copy.
Yeah, with a little note in it maybe that says, "You're my favorite radio person in the history of the world, way more than Walter Cronkite, way more than..."
Hey, Bobby,
go ahead, yeah.
Don't push it.
Okay. Well, he's got a book coming out called 1945, where you interviewed, I'm looking at the list here, George Clooney, some celebrities.
Well, wait a minute. Can we talk about the book for a minute?
Well, yeah, hold on a second. I want to get to I got to keep my listeners tuned in here, because what I'm going to say is, after we talk about the book, I'm going to talk about some of the famous people that you've interviewed.
Okay.
See, I'm hooking them back. I'm saying if you leave now, you're going to miss when we talk about him talking to George Clooney, Mother Teresa, Michael Jordan, all that. So don't leave.
All through.
Okay. So this book, 1945, walk me through what's going to hook my listeners to check the book out.
Well, I had always wanted to do a book about a great event, and to just delve down into it and take you along for the ride. This is not a dusty history tome. There are not a lot of footnotes. It's absolutely well-researched true history, but it reads like a thriller, even though you know the story. And it's called Countdown 1945, the 116 days that changed the world. And basically, it starts on April 12, 1945, when Harry Truman is the Vice President of the United States, and he suddenly gets a call to come to the White House. And he puts down the phone, and he says, "Jesus Christ and General Jackson." And he rushes to the White House, and when he gets there, Eleanor Roosevelt, the wife of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who's been president for 13 years, says, "Harry, the president's dead." And he says, "Mrs. Roosevelt, is there anything I can do to help you?" And she says, "No, Harry, is there anything we can do to help you, because you're the one in trouble now?" And he had only been president or vice president for 82 days and basically kind of shunted off to the side. And he's now the president. And America is at war with the Nazis in Europe, with the Japanese in the Pacific. And after he's sworn in, the Secretary of War, a 77-year-old guy named Henry Stimson, says, "Mr. President, I need to take you aside." Takes him aside, and he says, I need to tell you about a secret project to create a weapon of immense power, more powerful than anything that has ever been developed or researched. And Truman has no idea what he's talking about, even though he's vice president. And it's the Manhattan Project to develop the first atom bomb. In 116 days, Truman, one, has to learn about it. Two, the bomb has to be tested for the first time, and then he has to make the decision whether or not to drop it on Hiroshima to try to end the war on August 6th, 116 days later. And I promise, people are going to say, I knew that story. It's Truman, it's the scientists at Los Alamos, it's the soldiers, the flight crew in Utah and later at Tinian Island in the middle of the Pacific. It's a 10-year-old little girl named Hideko Tomoro on the ground in Hiroshima. It is the best thing I can say is it's a page turner. It's a thriller. It's a perfect book for, if you just if you're taking a vacation or you're just reading. I thought to myself, it's a perfect book to take on a plane, but nobody's getting on planes anymore, so you'll have to find another place to read it.
And you're telling me, because I mostly 99.9% only read nonfiction. As exciting as you're telling that story, all that is true. All the things in the book are true.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, no, this is nonfiction. Everything has been thoroughly researched, and there's so many things that happen in the course of this that are going to surprise you. The President Truman, he goes to Potsdam to meet with. This is right after the Germans had surrendered, to go meet with Winston Churchill and Joseph Stalin, the Soviet leader. Churchill, of course, the British Prime Minister. And the day that he's first there, July 16th, 3 weeks before the bomb is dropped, they have the first test of the bomb, and the scientists are in Alamogordo, on a desert in New Mexico, and they don't know. Some of them are saying, we're going to hit the switch, and it's going to be a dud. Nothing's going to happen. And other people say it is going to ignite the atmosphere, and they literally are wagering, will it destroy just New Mexico, or will it destroy the western United States? So, this is the unleashing of the atomic age, and there are people you never heard of who are just fascinating, and you're also a lot of people you have heard of, like Dwight Eisenhower, the Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, who says to Truman a few days before, "Don't drop the bomb. The Japanese are going to surrender anyway, and we shouldn't be the first country to unleash the first true weapon of mass destruction." And Truman wants to hear what he has to say, but he doesn't go with him. He decides he's going to drop the bomb anyway.
I've been reading Accidental Presidents, is what, that touches very, very lightly on what your book really goes into, especially, with the president dying. And that whole Accidental Presidents is about people who really weren't expecting to be the president being told, whoa, time for you to go. And they're like, holy crap, now I got to be the president. And so, there's a light stroke on what you're talking about in this book, but I'm going to read it.
I'm going to get you a copy. Maybe, depending on how this interview goes, I might put a little inscription in it. And I want you to honestly tell me and your readers afterwards whether or not you enjoyed it, because I'm not confident that you and they will say, you know what, that really was a good read.
Yeah, I'll read it. And then I have your number, so I'll call you in the middle of the night and be like, hey,
okay,
Chris, wake up. It's me, Bobby. I want to talk about chapter 4. Here's what I tell you. Yeah. Well, Yeah, I'm really happy you're here. I just wanted to ask you a couple things because
Yes, sir.
I was going through all your notes of all the great people that you've spoken to, and I was first reading about Mother Teresa. You've interviewed Mother Teresa. I wonder what is not talking to her like, but what is getting to her like, and how many people do you have to go through when you talk to someone like a Mother Teresa?
Well, this was back in 1979, and she was in Calcutta, which is where her mission was. And, I don't know, she had just won the Nobel Peace Prize. And so we went halfway around the world to interview her. I didn't have to set it up, but I remember we arrived at her mission, and I am not a particularly, well, I am a religious person. I believe in God. I'm not a particularly organized religious person. But I have to say that whether it was on a spiritual plane or a religious plane or a secular plane, she operated at a different spiritual level than anybody else I had ever met. And I remember when we were there for a week, seeing how she, was tending to lepers and people who'd been left on the street to die, and this extraordinary missionaries of charity. And I remember at the end of it, she brought me and my crew up to the chapel in her mission, and she prayed for our safe trip. And I was at the time, I'm pretty good about it now, I was a little bit of a nervous flyer, but when it ended, I turned to my producer and I said, you know what, I've never felt safer about a plane trip. God's flying on this plane with us. And she was just remarkable. She was a tough lady. She was a little Yugoslavian lady, 5 feet tall, but she was tough as nails as you had to be to deal with the extraordinary poverty and famine, the lack of food and sanitation and all of that in Calcutta, and to kind of create this oasis that she had.
Did she have bodyguards making sure nobody harassed her?
No. I mean, you got to remember, this is 1979. This is a different world, and there wasn't that kind of security in those days. I'll tell you, Calcutta, though, I've only been there once, and that was quite extraordinary. I remember we came in from the airport, and we're driving along. There was no big super highway. You're driving along like a 2-lane road, and this is in the middle of the night, and there were all these lumps, dark mounds on the sidewalks along the road coming in from the airport to the center of the city. And I remember saying to the driver, what's that? And he said, that's people. And I forget the number. I mean, it may have been 1 million, it may have been 2 million, who just slept on the side of the street, and they had these open gutters but where the sidewalk met the street that had running water in them, and that's where people would bathe and would brush their teeth, and that sanitation. I mean, that, it's kind of I should say sanitation in quotes, but it was an extraordinary scene, unlike anything I've ever seen before or since.
That's what I'm going to say when this interview is over. When I was talking to Chris, it was an extraordinary scene, unlike anything I've ever seen or done before. How about that? You like that?
Well, it's good. I like that.
Thank you very much.
We'll put you in the blurb for the book here. Did I tell you I've written a book?
You have. By the way, let me hit it again. Chris Wallace is on. June 9th. It's called Countdown 1945. Although, Chris, to be fair, people are going to hear this on radio, but millions are going to hear on podcasts, so they don't need to hear me reset it up because they've already heard us say it once. Does that make sense?
Oh. Yeah, you can never say it.
Okay. All right.
Incidentally, I want to thank you for dressing up for this interview.
Listen, let me ask you a couple more questions before I get roasted here too much. Michael Jordan, you were with Michael Jordan while he was still playing. I don't know if you watched the documentary or not. I felt like
I watched every minute of it.
Okay. He, depending on who you talk to, some say, he was a great leader. Some say he was a great bully. What would you say about Michael Jordan?
I would say what happened was that I loved Michael Jordan. I used to watch him all the time, and I always said, I'm going to watch him. And then the son of a gun quit, and I thought, my God, I've missed my chance. And then he came back, and I said, I'm absolutely going to go see him. And so I live in Washington, and I think they came to Washington once a year, and I made a point of taking my son, who was then 10 years old, out to see him. And it was like the Beatles. This was the first year that he came back, and they won 72 games, I think. They were either 70-12 or 72-10. I'm sure somebody out there knows, but they broke the record. for the most wins, and it was Jordan and Pippen and Rodman and Phil Jackson, and I said, this is the Beatles. And I was working on a magazine show with Diane Sawyer and Sam Donaldson at the time called Prime Time. And so I went to my producer and I said, if you can get us with the Beatles, can do it? And he said, sure. And you pitched them. For some reason, they were the hottest story in sports then. They said yes, and we basically spent about a month, not all solid, but on and off, on the road, at home, with the Chicago Bulls. And the highlight was I got to play hoops with Michael Jordan. I went up to him and I said, all right, so we're going to do this. And I said, let's play a game of horse. And he said, no, let's play dog. And I said, what's dog? He said, it's 2 letters shorter, D-O-G. So I said, okay. But I said, you start with D-O, and you have to shoot from the three-point line, and I can shoot from a few feet closer in. That was fine with him. So I'd start shooting. He'd start yelling. I'd miss the basket. He'd laugh. And then he hit one, and I missed, and that was D-O to D. And finally, I hit a shot. I swear to God, this is the truth. And he missed it. And I said, Michael, that would be dog, wouldn't it? And he said, weren't we playing horse?
Listen, by the way, 1945, I haven't said this enough. Countdown 1945 is Chris Wallace's book. There he is, holding it up again. You can see it. Soon you'll be able to feel it in your hands. You'll be able to read it. You will be emotionally moved. Yeah, you will be smarter. I'm going to read it, though. I'm going to read it. That will be, for my listeners, if I come on and go, hey, I read it and I enjoyed it, that'll be the real push. You can expect to be a bestseller for the rest of your life, every week for the rest of your life if I read it and love it, Chris. I'll be honest with you.
Okay.
They trust me that much.
I will take it, and let me say, if you don't like it, trash it, because I promise you're going to like it. It's a everybody I know says it. I know the ending, and yet I was sort of on the edge of my seat reading it.
One other question: how much of the suits that you wear on TV do you have to buy them, or do they just swap them out with you?
I'm sorry, say that again.
The suits on TV that you wear, I look at them. They look expensive. Are you having to pay for them, and do you keep them, or do they just send you a suit, you wear it, look pretty, and they send it off to somebody else?
I got to say, I've been interviewed a lot, and I'm doing a lot of interviews for this book tour. Nobody has ever asked me that question in my entire career. I have to say it's a pretty good deal. Fox buys our clothes for us. My wife is really, I'm going to put that down there so I look bigger in the screen. My wife doesn't like it because I complain when she spends money on clothes, and I get all of my suits for free. And they, they have measured you, and, so they're kind of custom made. It's a pretty good deal. And of course I keep them. Who else wants a used Chris Wallace suit? So, yes.
All right.
But, seeing the way you dress, Bobby, I would be happy to lend you a suit.
Appreciate that. I would take it. Was that
where we were headed with this conversation?
It was not. I'm probably far more muscular and broad, Chris. Just saying.
What size suit do you wear?
I don't know. I don't do fancy stuff like that. I wear a hoodie. I don't know. I have no idea what size suit I wear. If I'm being honest, like on American Idol, they do the same thing. They put me in clothes and then I have them. So you don't know you don't know like whether you wear a 38 or a 40 or a. I don't know. Do most men know what size suit they wear? I'm not as fancy as you.
I do. I think most. I think most men do.
Okay.
Well, like if you go into a store and they say
medium.
Well, first of all, do you wear suits or not?
I have to wear suits all the time. Like when I present on award shows or host things, I have to wear suits. Yes.
Yeah. So if you go into a store, do they not say to you, "Hey, Bobby, what size suit do you wear?"
You know what? I'm gonna text because we have just a couple more minutes on this interview. I'm gonna text my stylist right now. Do you have a stylist, Chris?
No. My stylist. Yeah. You know what my stylist is?
What?
Me?
Okay. I'm gonna text right now. What size suit am I? Let's see. What size suit am I? Let's see if we get a response in the next minute or so.
Okay.
One final news question for you. Do you think Carol Baskin killed her husband?
Is this Tiger?
Yes.
Here's the deal. Thanks incidentally for ruining the show. I watched the first episode. I'm probably going to lose all of viewers and listeners with what I'm going to say. I watched the first episode, and I thought, these are the worst people I've ever seen. I don't like anybody. I'm not rooting for anybody, and that's it. I stopped watching.
So you,
I'm binging on Netflix and Amazon. I'm watching a whole lot of TV. Some of it good, some of it not so good. But that Tiger King, I watched one episode, and that was enough.
Okay.
So I don't know what the answer to that question is.
All right, Chris Wallace is on with us. By the way, I am closest to a 38. That's the size suit I wear. What size suit are you?
You see, I'm a little bigger and brawnier. I'm a 39. So what I could do is that I could send you one of my old ones, and you could take it in at the shoulders since mine are a little broader. And
feels a little insulting, but I'll take it. Okay, here we go. One final time. Chris Wallace, Countdown 1945. It comes out June 9th. I'm going to get it. I'm going to read it. Chris, I'm just such a big fan. I feel like you have been in my living room or my bedroom all my life, and thank you for spending time with us. Who knew you were actually a nice guy?
Well, listen, I have listened to you plenty of times driving around places. As I say, you kind of introduced me to country music, which I really do love. Let me just say one quick thing. You know what I love about country music? That it's a community. And when they have these award shows, which is really all I ever see, when somebody's singing, everybody else gets up and they know the words to somebody else's songs, and I think that's pretty cool.
Amy, ask one question to Chris before he has to go.
Oh, well, I sort of just have a tip for Chris.
Oh, wow.
And I think, so Chris, when you're doing interviews for your book, it comes out June 9th, and Father's Day is June 21st. Like, you've got to go the angle of, like,
nice.
This is the best gift for you to get your father or father-in-law, because as you were talking, I was like, okay, I'm going to go pre-order or do whatever I need to do to order this for my father-in-law and my husband, because they will love this story. They'll love the book. And
can you
boom,
come with me
Father's
on the
Day
book
shopping
tour
done.
And you can just, because that is actually a great angle. I appreciate that. Yes, you know what? This is a great Father's Day book. Your father, your father-in-law, your husband, your son will love this book.
There he is.
Perfect.
Is that good?
Chris Wallace.
Did I do that
Anytime.
okay?
June 9th.
Yeah.
It's called Countdown 1945. Chris, a pleasure to talk with you. Good luck on the rest of your book tour. I hope you sell so many books you can't stand it.
Thank you. Great talking to you. Great treat.
Bye, Chris.
This is a Bobby Bones show.